And OTA sessions are in the books. It's now on to mandatory minicamp. Matt Derrick is here to talk to us about OTAs and a couple of updates from the team today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On Royals, maybe Locked On NFL. Lots of different shows out there that you can go check out. Don't forget, we're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. I'm your host, Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. He is Matt Derrick. We're going to be talking about all the OTAs, everything that happened in the OTAs today, a little bit later than we were expecting to have this conversation, and a couple of updates. And then we're going to talk about a preview of minicamp later in the show and some offensive updates about the wide receivers. But let's go ahead and get started, Mr. Derrick. What did you see? What injury update happened? Very scary injury update happened on Thursday, and now we are getting more information. You want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Thursday morning during a special teams meeting, which means most of the team was in there. This would be anybody who plays on special teams specialists. So it's a large group. Was meeting when BJ Thompson, defensive end, he was 5th round pick in 2023. Went into a seizure, has been reported, and suffered a cardiac arrest, meaning his heart did stop. Harrison Butker was one of the first to respond. He immediately went to get Rick Burkholder, who got the team doctor, and were able to respond immediately. Some of the folks from the KU Med Sports Center, that's also located in the facility, were able to respond. They came down to begin CPR and life-saving techniques on BJ to revive him. The Kansas City paramedics were called at, I believe, 8:37. They responded, got him to the hospital. They were able to stabilize him pretty immediately. Thursday morning, he did regain consciousness, and Rick Burkholder told us today that he's awake and alert. They're feeling very good about his prognosis and his standing. It is way too early to talk about football and how that's going to affect him going forward and what his status is. That will happen in the days and weeks and months to come, I'm sure. But it appears that he is out of danger. He is stable and will remain in the hospital for observation for a little bit. But a very, very concerning situation on Thursday that definitely threw a lot of people for a loop. Very concerning. But for Friday, it was largely back to work, back to normal for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I saw Rick Burkholder talk to the media a little bit today, and he said, that Butker did exactly what he was taught to do, and he did mention this, and I don't think he meant it in any way other than just to kind of say it, but he said it was kind of funny because they actually did a medical emergency training on Monday, and it's something the NFL makes every team do. So they are very well prepared. They know what is going on. They know what they're supposed to be doing. And in this case, it's a horrible situation for BJ. I hope he gets healthy and is able to come back and play eventually. Obviously, you're right. Football is not the question right now. It's what happened and how can they prevent anything from being an issue with him in the future. So hopefully he's able to get healthier. Couple more updates on injury-wise. What did you see from the Chiefs that was different than it has been in the past?
Yeah, there was a couple of good updates for the Chiefs. Brian Cook and Najee Johnson, who are both coming back from separate injuries. They were both in 11 periods, team periods, and 7-on-7 today. So that was the first time they'd started working in, I understand, earlier in the week. So this was just kind of an extension of what's been going on the last couple of days. But that's a step forward for both those guys who started out OTAs just going through positional drills. They were on the play today. Najee, in fact, made a really nice pass breakup on a play downfield. He definitely looks like he's picking up where he left off. And as Justin Reed mentioned today, Najee, as you should remember, before the injury last training camp, was in position to start at corner. He absolutely was on track to win one of those starting jobs opposite Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed. So having him back would be a big deal, especially, given how quickly he can come back will be the question. But Brian Cook also looked pretty comfortable today. It was good to see him back out there. We still have some of the regular injuries continuing to go ongoing. Xavier Worthy's on the sideline observing. Hollywood Brown was out there today in a limited role. He did not participate in the team or 7-on-7 periods, but he was out there for the positional drills and stretch periods. He's also dealing with a muscle injury, a little tweak right now. Doesn't appear to be anything significant. We also got to see our first glimpse of McCole Hardman back in a Chiefs uniform, wearing number 17. Would be a temporary situation since Kamal Haddon's also wearing 17 on the defensive side, but that's 90-man roster for you. I'm sure they gave him 17 because they still had the red 17 jerseys laying around with his name and number on them from last season. So that was a pretty quick assignment. But it won't really. I think new name that popped out today. Irv Smith wasn't at practice. We didn't get a clarification whether that was injury or personally related. Didn't see Isaiah Buggs. Chris Jones also wasn't out there. That Chris's situation appears to be voluntary. Isaiah's maybe related to his legal problems that he has down outside Kansas City. So I think that's for the most part the major updates, Chris.
Yeah, and the big thing, and I want to point this out, Bugs kind of makes sense. Chris Jones and Irv Smith, and I'm just speculating because I don't know anything specifically, but it's also possible they had something that they already had planned that's because they were planning on being off today. Not sure how that plays into this. It's all voluntary regardless. They'll be there for mandatory minicamp, I'm sure. So, not really worried about either of those situations. But as we said, and we started the show, this OTA was supposed to be on Thursday. It got moved to Friday because of BJ Thompson's situation, which makes a lot of sense. So any updates on Joe Thuney? Was he out there? Do you see him at all?
Still haven't seen Joe Thuney. Also still haven't seen Kadarius Toney. That's another name I should probably mention. Obviously with Thuney, we know that's still coming back from the pectoral injury, and I'm not expecting to see him at least participating next week in the minicamp. Right. I think it's going to be training camp before we see him. We don't really know Kadarius Toney's status, and also notable, Rashee Rice was not at practice on Friday. We don't have the information about whether that's personally related or injury related. Jalen Watson not participating. He was there for the positional and stretch periods, but didn't participate in team periods. That was also a kind of a muscle tweak that the Chiefs are just kind of nursing with him and Hollywood and Xavier right now.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of injury stuff going on. Obviously, not really what you want to be dealing with this time of year, but it is what it is. And mandatory minicamp will be kicking off next week. We'll get to that a little bit later. But when we get back, we're going to talk about an offensive update, talking a little bit about the wide receivers and what Matt has seen from this offense right after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much, much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make the car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Matt. So when you got to OTAs, one of the things that has been talked about a little bit is kind of what is going on in the wide receiver room. Obviously, McCole Hardman is there now. That's a new addition. But there's some other guys that are sticking out to you.
Yeah, right now, I mean, with Xavier Worthy being out, with Hollywood Brown, and then Rashee Rice again, on Friday, you had three of your obviously top four receivers who are not practicing right now, and that means opportunities for a lot of other guys. And I don't think anyone's taken better advantage of their opportunities that they've been getting this spring, other than Nico Remigio. The guy just continues to make play after play. hey, it's entirely possible he saves his best for when the media is there for the last practice of the week, since we haven't been there for the other 7. I don't think that's the case because a lot of guys are singing his praises. But again, he had a couple of the best plays of the day on Friday. The best one for me was Chris Oladokun during a team period where the third team, which I shouldn't really say that according to the rules, but it's out there. Chris Oladokun's the third team quarterback. I don't think I can hide that too much, but he was kind of a broken down play, was moving to his right and just absolutely dropped a bomb over 50 yards. That hit Nico. Nico was able to haul it in stride in the end zone for a touchdown. Just absolutely beautiful chemistry between those two guys. A great throw by Oladokun, but an even better catch by Remigio because he did have to go get it and caught it on the run for the score. But he had a couple of other really tough contested catches, a couple of downfield balls. Definitely a couple of the best downfield plays of the day were Nico, but he's also making the routine catches too, up close to the line of scrimmage, and he's getting a lot of work. Not sure that I saw a drop from him today either. So that just really underscores the job that he's doing. And we've heard from everybody now, even Carson Wentz today, once again, singing his praises and just how hard he has worked, how good he looks. And hey, we'll see. I mean, he got hurt last year, so we really didn't get to see an extended period of Nico with the pads on, and that's going to be the big test for him. I think, hey, as this period and when they get to training camp and extend it, if he keeps playing like this and then keeps playing like this when the hitting starts, he's going to get opportunities. And one of the places that he can absolutely make a role, even though, Dave Toews talked about the running back maybe being better built for the kickoff teams, Nico is going to have a chance to win a job on this team as a return specialist, both on kick teams and on punt teams.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, but they're going to have 2 guys back, right, on the kickoff, so it's possible that it could be Remigio and Zamet, so something to watch there. When you talk about Remigio, it's interesting because last year, like you said, he got injured. We didn't get to see him really play, but it's one of those situations where I'm not going to say it is a phantom injury, kind of like the Chiefs have had several times over the years, because there was, I remember that, but it's interesting that they kept him the entire time because usually when those types of guys come in, they get let go at some point. There's an injury settlement of some sort that comes and gets dealt with, and the guy is let go and he will be somewhere else very shortly. That's not the case with Nico. I think that they saw something with him last year, and it sounds like he's making all the, he's making him look smart right now.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, it was legit injury. Now, could he have returned from the shoulder separation at some point during the season? Probably. But, the Chiefs felt like, hey, that was just a good opportunity to be able to redshirt him, let him get healthy, but at the same time, let him just soak up the knowledge. I mean, he was an undrafted rookie for a reason. He needed some maturing and seasoning. As good as he did look during training camp last year, he had a lot to learn. So last year was definitely an opportunity for him. And I think it's also important that, I mean, he clearly looks like he attacked the weight room with his lower body. I mean, he couldn't be doing lifting during a lot of that period, but certainly he could do leg day all day, Chris. And I think right now, I mean, you're looking at him, his lower body looks a lot stronger than it did a year ago. And for a guy like him, who's a little bit undersized, I think that's huge because that just makes you a little bit more durable, a little bit tougher. I think he's been able to do it without losing any of the speed that he showed last year.
Well, and you look at his position, and obviously wide receiver is something that we've been talking about. Ryan and I have been talking about. I'm sure you've been talking about it when you've been on with him at times as well. You mentioned that 3 guys being out. Worthy can't practice. Rice wasn't there, and then Hollywood Brown's out as well. So you have a little bit more opportunity to show something at this point. But there's some other wide receivers that also have to take a step forward. And you said something about Kadarius Toney not being there. That's an interesting one. What else have you seen from the offense, though?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that should be encouraging because this time of year, the offense should be dominating. I mean, that's the thing is you can't hit anybody. You can't really touch anybody. Yep. So the quarterbacks and the receivers should be having a heyday. And they really are. I mean, that's the good thing. Now, question I think is, who has really put themselves into that 2nd tier? Because, I feel like there's the top tier with the 4 guys that are 90% to make this team, barring an injury, with Rice, with Worthy, with Brown, and Justin Watson. And then it's that second tier. And, a couple of guys in that second tier weren't practicing Friday, like a Kadarius Toney and a Justin Ross. Sky Moore is in that category, and he's had an up and down camp. He's had some really good moments. He's also had some kind of Sky Moore lack of concentration, drop plays that, continue to persist. Nico Remigio has put himself firmly into that bubble. I kind of had Montrell Washington in that group too, and I think he's firmly established himself. He's had some outstanding plays as well, and he's gotten more opportunities. Even Cornell Powell has gotten a lot of opportunities. So they've been able to rotate a lot of guys in and doing a lot of different things. And that's one thing that is very clear, is that right now, this time of year, and I should mention Isaiah Pacheco wasn't at practice on Friday either. So all the running backs, and Clyde's once again has not participated in any of these voluntary workouts either. So, and on Friday, you can move up everybody in the running back room 2 notches as far as how much, reps that they were getting, which meant that, hey, a Deneric Prince and a Luis Rees-Zammit, a lot of guys were getting some looks even with the first team.
Yeah, and Rees-Zammit is a guy that has stood out. What did you see from him? Because I know you're actually reporting on the charity softball event that happened on Thursday night, but it sounds like Rees-Zammit is really is fitting into this culture in the Chiefs locker room.
I tell you what, I was more impressed at the softball game Thursday night than anything I've seen in practice. And he's been good in practice, but, unless he was just absolutely snowing us, Chris, but he told us he'd never picked up a softball bat before. Now, I'm assuming he's picked up a cricket bat, and I've been told reliably by some of my followers over the pond that in the UK and PE, he certainly probably played some rounders. So he's probably got a little bit more experience than he's letting on, although it's probably not recent experience. But he goes up to the plate in that softball, in the home run derby, Chris, and took 3 or 4 pretty much complete whiffs, and then knocks a couple of balls over the fence. And it's a softball fence. But the ability to just go up to the plate in a softball game like that and go from apparently having no softball experience to hitting 2 home runs in your first try, that's absolutely ridiculous. And to me, I think it absolutely speaks to his athleticism, his hand-eye coordination, all of that. And to me, that's the reason why it's impressive, is that I think you see why his skill set could translate to just about any sport. Certainly rugby to football is a good translation, but he's no longer looking as stiff and maybe uncomfortable as he looked a couple of weeks ago. I still think some of his game is going to change the first couple of times he gets popped, how he holds the football, his running style. He's still a little bit more upright than he needs to be. And as Andy Reid said, he will probably adjust his pad level once he gets hit a couple of times. But other than that, he's really picking up things. He's looking more comfortable out of the backfield catching the football, getting the ball and running with it, not a problem. I'm really excited to see when the pads come on what he looks like, because as tough as a game that rugby is, he should be able to adapt to that. The only thing he just needs to do is tweak a couple of things. And I think that, I think once the pads come on, he's going to learn what he needs to tweak. But I think he's demonstrated that he's going to have the ability to make those adjustments.
So I have to ask the question, because I've been talking about it this week on the podcast a little bit. Left tackle, what did the rotation look like there? Did Kingsley Suamataia get some time as a starter?
We're still a little limited on the rules, Chris, about what we can talk about as far as depth chart goes, and since none of the coaches talked about it today. But I think I can safely say at least the rotation is continuing. But I wouldn't be surprised if by training camp, let's say that I think it's going to work out the way that most people see, that it's going to be a battle between Kingsley Suamataia and Wanye Morris, and we might have a winner in the battle pretty early in camp.
Okay. Well, and that is going to do it mostly for OTAs for us. We're going to get into a preview of training camp right after this. I went in and I got fitted for a PXG driver, the Black Ops driver. It is a fantastic driver, and I'm really looking forward to using it on the golf course. Had a lot of fun using it on the driving range, And the thing that I enjoyed the most about that experience was working with the PXG experts. He basically looked at my swing, gave me one of the irons to start off with, just to get comfortable with swinging. And once that was done, once I got comfortable and warmed up a little bit, he gave me a driver, and then he tuned the driver to the way I hit. He ended up changing the loft. We changed the shaft on the driver, and he changed where the weights were located. All of this to make my swing better and to give me more distance on the drive, get a little bit more loft on the ball. And overall, the experience was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to using this driver. You need to go check out PXG right now. PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/lockedonchiefs. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See your store for details. All right, really quick before we get into minicamp, I do want to say, if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, you need to go check out Locked On Sports Today. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And really quick, before we get into minicamp, is there anything else that stood out to you that we haven't talked about from OTAs today?
Yeah, there was a couple of interesting wrinkles. I mean, one for sure is that this is when the Chiefs and Andy Reid usually start some of their look-ahead scouting. And, he does it to kind of break up the monotony of the off-season workouts and also just kind of get a head start. So this is they do a day where they dedicate each day to one of the AFC opponents and week 1 opponent. So today was a little kind of game planning, at least in a sense, for the Baltimore Ravens. Montrell Washington, Nico Remigio, McCole Hardman took turns on scout team playing Zay Flowers. That was the most obvious example. But this was mostly a scout team day. I mean, there was one period of 11 on 11 between the ones and ones, twos and twos, that kind of thing. But this was, a lot of it was scout team. So the plays that the number 1 offense was going up against the number 2 defense, and the 2 defense was running looks that the Ravens have run in the past. So it's not maybe a true representation of what you're going to see once the season starts, because there's always coaching changes and player personnel. But it's a way for the players to get have a little bit more fun, and and that's they got a little bit of that today, just to do a kind of a servicing opportunity against the offense and the defense, and kind of specializing against an opponent.
Anything else that stood out to you other than the game planning?
I think one thing is at least the players got to deal with some heat today, and it was a hot one. I mean, this was the first day in Kansas City where I think it's going to get up over 90. Definitely the hottest practice that they've had so far, and the fact that it was a scorcher. Practice didn't start till 11:20, wrapped up about 1 o'clock. Didn't see anybody not handle it well, so obviously they got a pretty good ramp up. But I think that was the other thing I was most impressed with. Like I said, the offense, I think, had another good day, even despite the fact that they didn't have some of their biggest playmakers. And Patrick Mahomes, I think that's the message. He's looked absolutely like in preseason form. Saw another sidearm, pass today that only he can do, another no-look pass. I mean, that's just par for the course at this point.
Yeah, and there was video the Chiefs put out of him doing a behind-the-back pass to Carson Steele, was it, on Wednesday?
Yeah.
And Carson Steele caught it one-handed, so I'm sure Ryan's going to be mad that he missed that. But, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so minicamp starts next week. Why don't you break down what we're going to be getting into starting next week?
Yeah, next week, and minicamp is the mandatory minicamp. So this is the 3 days that if players don't show up, they can get fined. And fines aren't waivable anymore, so they will get fined if they don't show up. There's opportunities, obviously with some personal reasons, injury reasons, those are excusable. But we should get a little bit more information on some of these injuries, as far as whether it's been optional or whether it's been injury related, about why there's been some absences, with the Kadarius Tonys, for example. Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, veterans who've been kind of in and out, will probably be there for all 3 days, since it's not voluntary anymore. We'll get a better idea, at least as far as the full head count of who's around and what their injury status is and how available they are. But we only really get 2 quick days of that, because the third day of the mandatory minicamp is the endurance testing. That's the day that they run the gassers as the preview for training camp, because that's the test that they all have to pass before they clear their physical and they get to play in St. Joe. So they get to run. The rookies are going to get their first example. I talked to a couple of them Thursday night at the softball game, if they were ready for it, and at least they think they're ready for it. We'll see what the weather's like, and if they still feel like they're ready for it after that next week.
Yeah, it's a big difference between what you're talking about in June heat when you're talking versus late July heat. That's going to be a big difference. So I do think that that's going to be curious. So do you get media availability all 3 days, or is it? I understand the third day is mainly just conditioning, but media availability both days. Then I guess the first two.
We do get media availability all 3 days. The plan, hopefully, is that we will hear from Chris Jones and Travis Kelce on the first 2 days, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, they're going to wrap up with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that'll probably be it on Thursday. But we should get a few other players as well sprinkled in on Tuesday and Wednesday. And Thursday, I guess it's official now, is the ring ceremony. So the ring ceremony is Thursday night, and the red carpet and all of that stuff. So it is an invitation-only event, so it's not a public event, but you'll at least get to see a lot of photos and videos of the players and enjoying their celebration on Thursday night. And that's kind of for them, the last moment. I mean, that's when they're really going to try and put Super Bowl 58 in the back rearview mirror and move on.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see what those rings look like. I'm curious to see what they do this time around. Going back to back, if what they do with the rings in that situation, and if they are going to do anything, obviously, trying to go for the three-peat. We'll see how that works out. When you look at this mandatory minicamp, you're going to see guys like Travis Kelce, you're going to see Chris Jones, but the drills really aren't going to change, right? I mean, you're still looking at pretty much, non-contact type plays, and not really hitting. You're not going to have any pads, any of that kind of thing. But this will be the last time that we see the Chiefs until they report for training camp, which that hasn't been announced yet, right? The dates for training camp have not been announced.
Yeah, not officially. I would not be surprised if they're not released at the end of next week. The Chiefs usually have a pretty good tradition of the Friday after the mandatory minicamp, rather, is that when the training camp schedule comes out. So that's no guarantee that's going to come out on the 14th, but I think there's a pretty good chance, based on the collective bargaining agreement and the Chiefs playing on that Thursday night opener. The earliest that they can open the training camp with the rookie mini camp is July 16th. And then obviously they have an acclimation day and report day. So I think the earliest that the first practice would be like July 21st. So, it's going to be an early start, Chris.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking training camp used to be so much. It seems like it used to be at the very end of July and basically starting practice in August. And now you're going to be having guys reporting basically almost a month after they get done with mandatory minicamp. Definitely going to be something to watch there. And it is funny how Kansas City always likes to drop news on Fridays. Seems to be something that they like to do overall. What are you looking forward to the most when it comes to mandatory minicamp next week, other than seeing the different players that haven't been there?
Yeah, one thing for sure is, at least in those two practices, is that they do have fans in there. I mean, it's open to season ticket members, and I think you have to apply for them with your points and Chiefs Kingdom points and all that. So it is still a limited group, but they have a few hundred fans that will come in. That's intriguing, if for no other reason than they also, for the fans who are there, they do a radio broadcast. So You get to hear some, Mitch Holthus and Matt McMullen with the Chiefs doing some interviews and talking to some of the people and players that we always don't get access to. So sometimes you get a little few nuggets in there. But it makes, certainly for the players, it makes it more lively, having some fans there and having some engagement. So that's always intriguing. The fact that you should have everybody that's healthy out there and you get to see some guys. I mean, we really haven't seen much of Chris Jones. We've seen a little bit of Travis Kelce, but being able to get those guys out on the field and see where they're at. And like you said, I mean, this is, even though the Chiefs are still going to be fairly cautious, I mean, if they held out Xavier Worthy, it wouldn't surprise me, but this is kind of your last opportunity to see everybody who is healthy, ready to go in their last kind of moments. And you also should, at least at this point, these are going to be the 11th and 12th practices that these newcomers and the rookies have had. And it gives you at least for us in the media, it gives you now the first opportunity to have a back-to-back day to see how they kind of handle those days and how they're stacking days on days. And, instead of just maybe seeing these little tiny steps, now we're going to be able to get to see kind of the incremental steps next week. And I'm always intrigued because you want to see, hey, consistency is a big thing. You need to see who can put it together on Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe not just on Wednesday.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that is going to make a big difference when we get down to roster talk when we get into September, because training camp is going to be a grind and it's going to be in front of everybody. As Matt said, it's probably going to be around July 16th is when it's going to start, which probably won't actually really start having practices until probably, July 25th, 26th with full team, because you're going to have the rookie time and then you have acclimation and all that. So that's going to be something to look forward to. Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciated you coming on. Go find him at Chiefs Digest. And what else have you got going on right now?
You can find me at Chiefs Digest, and obviously you look up Chiefs Digest on YouTube if you haven't been there yet, because you'll find a lot of videos and everything that I'm doing right now as far as the podcast. 41 is the mic with Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. You can find it all at Chiefs Digest, but definitely if you're on YouTube, go to Chiefs Digest on YouTube and be a subscriber, because we've got new content coming all the time.
Appreciate it, Matt. Thank you so much. And that is going to be it for us today. Ryan will be back, and we'll be talking more about a preview for mandatory minicamp next week. We will talk to you then.